Hi everyone, and welcome to my Aegon video. This is my first Corona video for the design meet, so I'm super excited to finally show something about Aegon and in the 2 years that I worked there. To make it a bit smaller and to turn it into a 10-minute video, I would like to talk about 3 things I learned about setting up a design system at Aegon. So the slide that you're currently looking at is a small sneak peek of all the notes that I created for the last couple of years, because I also had no idea what I was doing when starting a design system for Aegon. But since we only have 10 minutes and I wanted to dive a bit deeper into 3 other topics, I just wanted to let you know that if you have any questions regarding the items that you see in the list, just let me know. I'm more than happy to help. So the first topic that I want to dive into is a bit about the terminology of a design system, because when we started at Aegon, we were called the Department of Pretty Pictures, which was a quite positive word and a positive vibe around that because we make beautiful and pretty stuff, but it wasn't really about design systems in general. So it was a bit unclear where to start and what Aegon actually expected from us. So we really had to define what the service of the design system is. And we did that by doing some different workshops. So we did 3 different workshops. We did a workshop with designers and content managers to talk more about UX principles, about what they struggle with, about differences between design and development. But we also did workshops with developers and digital managers and product owners. And in the end, this was the best start that we could ever take because it really defined on why they needed a design system. Because it was really about accelerating development to reduce costs in the end, of course, because that's 99% of the times when someone would start a design system. But it gave us a bit of an insight in why they needed the design system as a service. And this really helped us because in the long run, we ended up in discussions in do we need to take a conclusion, or do we need to round this up in favor of design, or do we need to round this up in favor of development? Because that can be very different, as we know. So redefining the why of a design system as a service really helped us in the short term on where to start and what to do, but also in the long term on how to proceed with the design system and what the design system should be all about in the future of Aegon. So the second topic that I want to dive into is all about proposals. I've talked about proposals earlier to other designers, and proposals are part of our design process at Aegon. They help us to define what we actually are gonna create, and they help to align stakeholders to make sure that we don't end up with surprises when we actually deliver a component or a pattern or an update to the design system in general. So to give you a small example, as designers, when we talk about a dropdown, we talk about this area with a label and with a chevron pointing down, and when you click on it, something pops open which is beautifully styled, and when you hover with a mouse on it, you get a hover state, and when you click on it, maybe you have a click or an active state. But if a developer talks about a dropdown, you actually means a select. And although a select can be very similar to a dropdown, a select is mostly used within forms because it's a form that you can say the item is text or the item is a select. So if it's a form item, it also needs a helper text, it needs other attributions, for instance with a question mark to generate tooltips, etc. While we think as designers a dropdown is super generic, so we want not only to use it in forms, but we also want to use it in a dropdown, for instance for an e-commerce landing page where you want to filter or you want to sort on certain stuff. And then we actually don't need labels with question marks for tooltips and helper text underneath. So to keep it short, that's why we create proposals, and this is what it could look like. So you're currently looking at a proposer from a notification bar, and I will share the Figma link in the end of the video, so you can dive into it a bit more deeper. But what we do is that we try to align every discipline and every stakeholder about what we mean with a notification bar. So the title is actually also the name of the component. We have a small and brief introduction of what the notification bar actually is, a visual example which is more of anatomy of what it could look like. So we try to define if something is fluid or something is sized in a specific size. But the most important part is basically the text that is below that I can go through briefly, but you should really look it up later, is we define in some sort of Moscow way in what the must-haves are, what the nice-to-haves are, and the won't-haves are. So we really define what the different variants are. So we have a notification bar. It should have a success variant. It should also have a warning and an error variant, maybe also a neutral variant. And what are the attribution and content items that are actually in the notification bar? So we have a title, but is the title optional or is it mandatory? If we have a description and a link, is it even possible together? How many characters are allowed? Content manager, what do you think about this? So the proposal is done when every question is answered and everyone knows what we're actually going to build. So the proposal also makes sure that we don't have a hard handover, for instance, to development, because we keep communicating with each other on what we're actually going to create. So the last topic that I want to dive into is all about blueprints. And blueprints really made my life way more easier because I was working together with around 10 to 15 different designers that were differently skilled. So we had juniors, seniors, people that thought they were senior but were actually junior. And sometimes we had this huge gap in culture and language because we were working together with people from Brazil, but we were also working together with people that were talking Hindi or English or Dutch. And in the end, we want to create the same thing. We want to create a beautiful layout which is consistent across different platforms and across different pages. But you're not going to create a full component of a full page if you're still exploring various options in brand identity even. So what we try to do is gather all these things into blueprints. And they are basically copy-paste UI stickers that other designers could copy and paste to their own local files. So you're currently looking at a wizard step to be more specific. And we did a small explore on what a wizard could look like at Aegon. And we had this idea with confetti and with a progress bar and a small and brief description for every step. But it was just an idea that we tested on one user journey. And we weren't really sure if this was sustainable for other teams and for other designers as well. So to make sure we could keep speed in development and in design, we created a blueprint out of it. And other designers could copy-paste this blueprint in their own file. And they could just explore with it and see if the title and the description could even work in their own user scenarios. And if it came out that a lot of other designers could use the same pattern, then we would turn it into a component and we would turn it into a bigger component. But if it wasn't really possible, then we would dive into more of the specific use cases and see common patterns and create smart and smaller components out of them. And that's really where blueprints made my life super easy. As a designer at Aegon, we want to push new designs, better designs, more innovation. And blueprints can really help you into spread these maybe almost documented patterns and focus more on the adoption of those patterns and really see if some patterns or blueprints actually work. And to round things a bit up in this video, I have 3 small takeaways that we talked about during this video that can help you in setting up a design system or raising the question of a design system at a client. So when you're at a client and you spot inefficiency, whether it's in design or in development, what you should try to do is set up a small workshop with stakeholders that are part of your core group of the design and just figure out where these inconsistencies come from. And maybe the design system is not a solution, but to think more as a design system can help the team and you as a designer to create more consistency around the platform. So the outcome maybe is not that we are gonna start a design system team, but it can be a starting point to gather around a table and spot inefficiencies in the website and print them out, list them into certain columns, and really talk about how are we gonna solve this for now, but also towards the future. So if you need help with that, just let me know. There are tons of examples and I'm really here to help you with that workshop. So the second takeaway is all about proposals. Proposals were part of our design process at Aegon. They still are actually, but I think proposals can really help you with defining features or components that you are going to create. Just make a simple page in a Figma file and list down the component with a visual example and ask a front-ender, hey, can you look at this page? Do you actually know what we are going to create? Do you have any questions about it? And just repeat that question with all the main stakeholders in your team to make sure that there are no surprises in the end of your delivery. And the last takeaway about blueprints, just remember that blueprints can really help you if you work with a lot of designers that are working within a corporate company or are working in different teams, and they really help you to explore certain patterns into future components. So if you have any questions after this video, or you have spotted a lot of inefficiency on the platform that you're working on, just hit me up on Slack. I know design system sounds like a big container word, and it actually is. Most of the times it's just a small part in see how we can see the design system as a service. So thank you all for listening and watching to this presentation. Let's go to the next topic.